the Know Your Gear podcast. Today's episode of the Know Your Gear podcast is brought to you by Patreon members, channel members, and viewers who like and subscribe. Thank you for making this possible.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Know Your Gear podcast, episode 403. I hope everybody had a fantastic week. My week was busy, but that's good. Busy is good. Better busy than bored. I went to California. I went to Guitar Center, not the store, but the corporate headquarters. I met with Gabe, the CEO. We did a podcast, a discussion, if you will. We did that, and you'll be seeing that soon. In fact, so you know, it's just. Let me see. Let me see right now. It is finished, just now finished rendering out. So most likely, not most likely, here's what's going to happen. It will go after this episode is over. It will go to the patrons. The $5 and up patrons will get to see it probably for the next 24 to 40 hours. And I am planning to have it out probably by Monday. It'd be my guess. I'm just guessing at this point. But usually I get their feedback on anything. It was a very pleasant discussion for the most part, and awkward. I don't know if you've ever had to sit next to somebody that you just said a bunch of stuff about publicly. Like, hey, hey, I think Guitar Center is going to fail. Hey, okay, I remember when you said that. And then we had a discussion from there. So it was an interesting thing. Very intelligent person, which was very obvious. And a lot came from the discussion, which I think is going to be shocking. I was shocked by it, all different directions of what came from it. I don't want to give away too much. I feel like it was a really, really cool, just really cool podcast. So those interested can join Patreon. So you guys know, I know I'm usually bad at this part, but I should really do this. If you sign up for the free patron, you don't get to see it. But if you sign up for the $5 patron, you can click that. I think it's like a 14-day trial. You get a trial. You'll get to watch the bonus, or not the bonus. You get to see this podcast before it comes out. And then if you want to cancel your membership before it charges you, that's up to you guys. It's a good way. In other words, it's a good way to check out the Patreon page and support the podcast. Okay, let's get into the episode. There was so much going on this week. And first thing, I'm just going to grab some early riser questions. First one's from Cowboy742 says, did you keep your PRS Horsemeat overdrive pedal? I did not. I didn't keep any of the PRS pedals. They were really good. I don't want you to take into consideration anything quality-wise in the pedals. Some products just don't stick. What I mean by that is, like, I already have something like it. And I'm like, it's cool. And I'm glad I got to do the video and show it to everybody. But I'm like, am I going to replace my blah, blah, blah with this? And that's sometimes what that kicks in. In those particular cases, that pedal sounded really good. If you watch my video of those pedals, my really big critique was how big they are. And I already have a couple pedals that I think are just way too big. And I love them. So to me, the big pushback for me mentally on the PRS pedals was, I didn't love them, any one of them, enough to give up that much real estate on a pedal board, because that's the issue right there. It's just a lot of real estate. And if anyone watched my pedal board video, know that I don't use a whole lot of pedals and I don't use a big pedal board. So to me, it's like, 5, 6 pedals. I think the most pedals I've ever used on a pedal board that I remember is 7 pedals, maybe 8. And I think that's a lot. So some of you are probably like, that's a lot. And some of you are like, that's nothing. For me, 7, 8 pedals is a lot of pedals. The way I think of pedals is, in my world, is most of the time when I'm playing music, I'm in an environment where I don't get set up. I'm not in a band that plays out every week. I'm usually guest playing with musicians. I'm jumping on stage with somebody, or I'm joining something. And so my rig is light and easy. And to me, every pedal is one more potential problem. So I'm like, if I go on stage and there's 5 potential problems, I'm like, I'm aware of it, but I don't want 6 or 7 or 8. Just some guy says, why are they so big? It's funny. I think everything's cool now. Look, some people know, definitely the patrons know, when the PRS pedals came out, I said some things. The PRS guys didn't like it. There was some, some fun times for everybody. It wasn't so I'm really just rehashing this. It just sucks. But just to give you an idea, why are they so big? I don't know. What I implied and said that was probably not one of the many things they didn't like was, I said Paul Reed Smith himself, Paul Smith is not a pedal guy. To me, it's a weird thing. Okay. You have a guy out there and he's like, I don't like pedals. What did he call? He calls them video game controllers sometimes. He's like, you just plug a guitar into an amp. What do you need a pedal for? Most guys are more interested in their pedals than making music. These are all basic quotes that Paul Reed Smith has said. And then he came out with pedals, and the pedals are quality because I believe Paul Reed Smith Guitars, the company, they just make quality stuff. So it's not like they're going to make a crappy line of pedals. And they didn't even build them. Right? They're ghost built by a really good builder here in the U.S. But I feel like maybe, and I could be totally wrong because this is, again, just my gut instinct, and this is what I said then, one of the things. I don't want somebody who doesn't like something to make something. And when those pedals came out, I was like, yeah, this is what I feel like someone who doesn't like pedals would think that people who like pedals would want. Like big giant pedals with goofy names. Like I made this joke once. Let me show it to you so I don't actually just sit here and continue to bash on PRS guitars. Because, okay, it's bad enough. I always feel like it's a Gibson and PRS bash hour, and sometimes Fender. And ironically, we're going to be switching to Fender right now. But hey, when you're the big guys, I guess, what's it, you punch up, not down? It's hard for me to pick on a small builder. I want to show you what happened with those pedals for me. And I'd like to point out, the quality of the pedals was never in question. They sound great. They work great. It was the marketing and the everything else. So when I this, I'm going to show you this now. I'm just trying to find the picture that's going to do the best. Come on, let me get you. So in the early 2000s, Fender came out with an amp. What a shock. Fender always comes out with an amp. A lot of you are going to have flashbacks, right? Some of you guys are going to be laughing. So in the early 2000s, I had just became a dealer for Fender. And Fender had come out with this amp, and it's not even about the dealership thing. It was just me physically as a musician, as a person. So Fender comes out with this amp, and it's called the Heavy Metal, the Bigs. That's where the metal head. Sorry, it's the metal head. I'm sorry. This is going to sound so funny, but I gotta do it. So Fender comes out with this thing called the metal head. Let me explain this. First of all, you're looking at this picture right now. Yeah, it looks like a road case, okay? And it says MH in big chrome, and there's chrome everywhere. Chrome numbers and letters, chrome things. Big oversized cabinet, big oversized head. Look, you get it as a full stack, and literally they made it look like I said, like road cases, right? It's got the road case handles and stuff. Very, like I said, right out of an 80s rock and roll music video where the roadies are pushing stuff on the stage. This is what they made this amp look like. And of course, I think it was like 300 watts. We could probably look because we're looking at specifications. Does it give us the specs on this? It was like 300 watts or 500 watts. It might have been 500 watts. Yeah, and this is the market copy. Unleash the brutal guitar assault within one of the most powerful amps on the planet. Fender first true metal amp. The Fender MH500. 550 watts into 2 ohms. 400 watts into 4 ohms. Solid state electronics. This isn't 2, by the way. Okay, this thing came with a set of earplugs. I swear to God, this is all true. Right? We're looking at it right now. I gotta make this crap up. So it comes with a set of earplugs. And I love this. What does it say about the backstage? Like, oh, see accessory box. Oh yeah, that's right. It came with an accessory box, right? Right. Brutal numbers. Right. And I saw it and I thought, this is a true story. When I saw it, somebody goes, what do you think? And I go, this is what my grandfather thinks metal is. This is this is it. Like my grandfather watched 2 Beavis and Butthead videos and goes, this is what dumbass kids thinks cool. But keep in mind, this is early 2000s, so it's probably 20 years late for that to be cool. But I was making fun of the fact that Fender was in this analogy, my grandfather, right? What is Fender doing? This is the dumbest thing. Now, for those out there then maybe you purchased one and love them, because things like this do get a cult following. And right now is taking to the Reddit page about what an asshole Phil McKnight is. Again, I am not critiquing the sound. I never heard it. I had no interest in owning it, so I didn't plug in, because the worst thing that could have happened to me was I'd like it, because then I'd have to sit there and look at this thing and go, I know it's dumbass, but it sounds good. So I know nothing about it. I just remember like thinking it was the silliest thing ever. And it just felt so, and here's a good example. One of my buddies, his name's Bill. He's retired. He was my everything but Fender rep. He worked for Guild Guitars, and when Fender acquired Guild, he came onto the Fender team, and then they put him in charge of what they call Fender Specialty. Fender Specialty is still to this day, it's referred this way. Fender Specialty is everything that's not Fender, is how you think of it. So if you ever meet a guy and he says, hey, I'm Fender Specialty, that just means he's everything but Fender. So in Bill's case, he was Gretsch and Jackson and EVH, and at one point for me, Tacoma, what that was gone. And, all the specialty brands, right? Okay. And one day, older gentleman, as you know, he's retired now, right? Retired many years ago. In fact, he retired before I probably started even doing YouTube. In fact, he did retire before I started doing YouTube, to give you a reference. And he said that one of the best things I've ever heard. I've regurgitated and used it so many times in my life. I love it. He came in the store one day and he handed me some catalogs, because that's what reps used to do. That's how old-timey just a few years back was. Reps would come in your store with stacks of, I got more catalogs for you. I know how customers like them. We never had to heart. I'm serious. This is no joke. None of us in our store had the heart to tell the reps that we were just throwing the catalogs right in recycle bins, that no customers wanted catalogs anymore. We couldn't give catalogs away. So anyways, he would come in like all the other reps, got more catalogs for you. And he put them on the counter. I'm like, cool. And I remember he put the Jackson catalogs on there one day, and I'm leafing through it. And, I'm getting old. So I'm like looking through and I'm like, I don't recognize any of these people. Right? This is probably one of them was like Misha Shore before it took off. Right. And I'm like, who are these guys? And this is the line I love. He goes, I don't know. And if I knew who they were probably the wrong guys to put in that catalog. And I to this day say that as I get older, when somebody goes, hey, have you heard of this blah, blah, blah thing, that kids are into? And I go, no. And if I did, it was probably not the cool thing, right? Because I'm too lame and old to know it's cool. So anyways, the metalhead was the thing. So I have to admit, there's a bias always with me, of course, like any person, you filter your life through your own paradigm kind of thing. And I remember when I got the Paul Reed Smith pedals, that was my first gut reaction, was like, oh my God, it's the heavy metal amp as pedals. Horse meat. This is totally what somebody thinks. Like, he probably went out and he goes, hey, these idiots like fart pedals. Just make them a pedal. And he probably was like, let's make them sound good, but do what they want. So anyways, in my critiques of their pedals, I said that they were large. They were large. By the way, somebody just said something in the comments. I want to pin it, and I'll grab it. Real quick, because why I have these amazing moderators, and hold on a second. Okay. So I just sent something to the moderators. Now they're looking. Okay. Anyways, so now I think about this, I could take the PRS pedals and put them in Metalhead amp. Anyways, I feel bad because the person asked me probably has those PRS pedals and loves them. Look, like I said, I like them. Everything I said in that video was 100% honest. I know it's 100% honest, one, because that's how I am, but two, it's what pissed them off. So obviously I didn't say anything to shine you guys, and my critiques, I think, were still valid to this day. Good quality pedals, way too large. The naming was a little on the, it wasn't really congruent with the PRS vibe. So I thought the pedals should be more vibe like that, but quality by any means. All right, let's go to another subject. Unfortunately, I have some bad news. So that's what I was asking the moderators, was to verify. So let me share this with you. Let me do this. Speaking of which, about why it's important to talk about and maybe care about some of the people that have made our lives amazing as musicians. So it looks like we've lost Mark Sampson. So if you guys have recently seen, I just recently did a review of the Bad Cat amp with Mark Sampson. This was a big deal because Mark Sampson had kind of joined back with the Bad Cat family. As you guys may know, if you watch the podcast, you know that John Thompson, the owner of Bad Cat, and I are good friends. He's been very kind to me over the years and very nice to the channel. And when I say that, I don't want you to confuse anything. I've never taken a penny from Bad Cat. They've sent amps and I've gotten to keep them and stuff, but they don't pay me. They don't do sponsored videos. It's our friendship that connects us. And not only I enjoy his friendship and passion, I enjoy his amps, especially the Mark Sampson one, which I said was one of the best 5 amps I've ever tried in my life, and I totally mean it. Speaking of things I kept, I actually just sold, if you guys watch on my reverb, I just sold 4 amps to justify keeping the Mark Sampson amp. So that's where I'm at with that. Anyways, it says I'm going to mess this up, okay, guys? Let me do my best. It is with great sadness that we must announce that we have lost a beloved member of the Bad Cat family. Our dearest friend, Mark Sampson, has passed away. We will have much more to say on this later, but for now, please keep his family in your thoughts and prayers, especially since I happen to know Mark was he was going through some stuff with his dad and stuff. So it just really sucks. This is really bad news. And the reality is, that's what I'm talking about. You know, everybody likes to make fun of, Paul Reed Smith and Jeff Kiesels and all these guys. But the truth is, I would love, as a person who got to interview everybody, to interview Leo Fender. I would have loved to interview, Norlin. I would have loved to interview these people and have video content like that. And because, like I said, just to pick somebody's brain, even if you don't like what they do, and even if that, that's not their thing. But I've always said this. There's only 2 kinds of guitar players. No, I haven't always said this. I'm sorry. I've always said this to my friends. I've never said this to you guys. There's only 2 kinds of guitar players when it comes to guitar buyers. Okay? Ones who buy originals and one who buys copies. That's it. Because it makes sense, right? So what I mean by that is when somebody says, oh, that guitar is silly and it's dumb or it's expensive, I'm like, yeah, but trust me, a version of it is what you have. A version of, like I said, nothing goes top to, bottom to top. It goes top to bottom. They make nice stuff. Mark Sampson made premium amps. And when I want you to be educated about this. So if you're thinking like, oh, well, I've never owned an amazing Mark Sampson amp, you have. It's like saying, it's like Ozzy Osbourne when he said one of his biggest influences is the Beatles, and you're like, I'm not into the Beatles, but I like Black Sabbath. You're like, well, actually, you kind of like a little bit of the Beatles too. That's where it comes from. And same thing when Mark Sampson was an originator, and literally, if you never played any of his amps, that's okay, because trust me, you've played somebody who is inspired by him, and their amp has either a piece of his soul, technology, whatever you want to call it, or it's been inspired by that. And man, yeah, that's tough. So that's bad news. I saw it, so you guys know in the comments, and thank you. I want to thank the moderators at all. Sometimes you guys don't, they're the hidden figures behind the show. Luckily I get to reach out to them like I did right now, and thank you, Tim, and for getting that done for me, and verify that, so I don't give you guys. So like I said, information has been verified. I've learned now, obviously doing these shows over the years, that when I hear something, when somebody puts something in the comments that might sound suspect, that's what the moderators do. Believe it or not, behind the scenes, they're double checking things that you guys are saying, so that I don't sound like a total complete moron. Which, even with their help, they can't stop it from happening. But they could limit it a little bit. Okay. On that note, what are we going to talk about now? Because I got to really switch gears. I think what we'll do now is we'll jump over to another gear question, because it's a gear channel. By the way, thoughts and prayers out to Mark Sampson and his family, and to John Thompson. I know this is probably killing him. I just recently spent probably a couple hours, about a month ago, talking to John Thompson from Bad Cat. And in that conversation, it was mostly about how amazing Mark Sampson was, and how he pinches himself every day. This is literally, I'm quoting him. He pinches himself every day to get to work with his idol. And I was going to do a podcast with them. It's just, believe it or not, Mark Sampson had some personal family issues, and the schedules weren't lining up. So It's horrible to hear all this stuff. Let's switch to mid guitar. Mid guitar says, "Hey, Philip McKnight, I bought a Relic Fender custom shop, and the bridge saddles and the slug screws are rusted out. Okay, any tips on getting these out or clean them up? The rust." Sure, of course. There's tons of stuff you can use. I just use WD-40. I don't spray it directly on there. I'll put it on a cloth and kind of wipe it around and let it kind of eat at that. I don't think there's anything. I mean, I'm sure there's some guys out there that probably have some better suggestions as well. But I have WD-40, so it's always like what I have. I just use a little bit, and sometimes I will stick something like a paper towel underneath the bridge plate of the saddles and the bridge plate, and I'll spray a little bit of WD-40 on there. But again, just a little bit to kind of like loosen up and break that up and take that apart. If for some reason I can't clean that up, sometimes you can use vinegar, but the problem with vinegar is it's more of a soaking thing. So I found that putting vinegar on rust or putting vinegar on a thing isn't going to really help so much as soaking it, because you can soak. So in other words, when you get those saddles and screws out, you can literally, you can just throw that in a jar full of vinegar and wait, and it'll clean it all off. So that's what I use for that. But Dr. Frankenstein saying Bristol gun oil cleaner. Sure. There's a lot of things. Like I said, everybody's going to have some really good suggestions. I usually just go right for the what do you have around the house thing, but those are great suggestions as well. He said Ballistol gun oil. Apologize. But the other thing is sometimes if I can, I just cut them out with a Dremel, but that's not very common. Usually that stuff is not very hard. Jesse says, "Phil, the head of the screws was entirely ripped off by the previous owner. How can I get the rest of it out of the guitar?" Well, first of all, at some point you have to kind of validate the pricing on this, so it might be cheaper just to buy a whole aftermarket bridge than buy the new saddles. But I use a Dremel if you have that. I use it to cut those out. I have a little carbon blade on it, and it just cuts pieces out. That works for me really, really well. If for some reason you're talking about just like it's drilled out, or stripped out to the point where you can't unscrew it, what I do is, if you can visualize the grub screw now in the saddle, is I will take the saddle off, because usually that's just the Phillips head screw on the back. Take the saddle off. Once I get it off, I'll put some vice grips. I have some small ones that I just clamp down on the other side of the grub screw and then turn it out from the back and come from it from the back, and it'll work as well. Don't use needle nose pliers. You won't get enough force of grip on it. So, but that usually will work. And again, like I said, this is all without seeing what your problem is. So always filter what I'm suggesting as more as like start points, because again, I'm not looking at your actual problem. I'm just hearing about it. John says, "Hey Phil, I see the Emerald guitar is back on the wall. Is that a keeper or a temporary resident on the channel?" It's a keeper. I wanted this guitar so bad. This was I was super excited for this, the Emerald guitar. So there are guitars. Most of the guitars that you see on the channel come from two avenues by far. Companies send them. They reach out and say, "Hey, you want to see the new thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, right." It's part of the addiction, right? Like, "Hey, Phil, would you like to see another Strat?" "I sure would. But how about red or black?" "Oh, I can't wait." So yeah, there's that. But if that's not the case, sometimes I'm just getting a guitar like I did, like the Fender Standards or the Ibanez AZ to make a video, or this Epiphone. This was hey, I have a great idea for a video. This Epiphone, if you didn't see it, this week's video. If you didn't see this week's video, it's this Epiphone special, and that was a great video for me. It was great, meaning I enjoyed making it. I was dreaming up ideas for videos, and I thought, what if I review? I kind of took the idea from like a chef versus like, a at-home cook kind of idea. I was like, what does a guitar tech think of a guitar that everyone who buys the guitar thinks is great, right? And I thought I was going to get this clickbait video and it was going to be amazing, which was like, so I reached out to Sweetwater and I said, "Hey, this video is this guitar is one of the highest rated Epiphones." Actually, at the time, it was the highest. If it was, now it's the Firebird. I would have just had him sent the Firebird now that it beat by one vote or one review. But anyways, I reached out to Sweetwater and I said, hey, can you send me this Epiphone special so I can do a video with it? And I sent them the title of the video is like going to be, something clickbaity. And they were like, sure, we're fine with that. So I sent the guitar out. I thought what was going to happen is I thought I was going to get the guitar and be like, this is a poop guitar. And then the title will be like, Guitar Tech versus, something clickbaity, like, right? People are crazy if they think this is good or whatever the thing is. And instead it was a great guitar. So I was like, oh, well, I just confirmed what everybody's been saying who's buying it. So I'm like, all right, well, that's the video we have. But it was good. You guys all enjoyed it. And it did well. And I appreciate that. But that's my point is what I'm telling you is that sometimes the guitar is just function of the channel. The Emerald guitar is something different. And here's why. My buddy Larry Mitchell got an Emerald guitar. I saw him on social media. And as you guys know, I'm a freak for carbon fiber instruments. I'm always curious about them. This whole idea that one day a guitar will be amazing, but not made of wood is always interesting to me. And so anyways, what happened was I saw him and I liked his post, and then I saw somebody else in the Emerald guitar and I was like, okay, I like their post. And then because of that, the algorithm starts feeding me Emerald guitar posts, and I was just liking them all the time. It's just, doom scrolling, and I'm like, oh, I like that. And then somebody at Emerald Guitars reached out and said, hey, we saw you were liking our posts. Hey, would you be interested in doing a video? And I'm like, I absolutely would love to do a video. And they said, okay, how do we make that happen? And I said, I'd like to pick out a guitar and have you send it and do a video. And they said, okay. And like everybody, like, hey, what's your rates or what do you charge? And I'm like, no, I really just want this guitar. This is like a big deal for me. And this guitar, so falls under a deal I've made. I don't feel really comfortable saying what other YouTuber gave me the idea, but he's somebody you all respect and love. And one day he gave me this idea for like how to talk to a company. And what I did with them is I said, look, I either will love the guitar and I'll keep it forever, or I'll just do the video, for the sake of making content. And so the deal I made with them was if I like it and I want to do the video, I'll do the video and then you can RA it back. And if I love it, I'd like to keep it. And if I ever don't want it, I'll send it back to you. So that guitar, I have a couple in that situation, not very many, where yes. So to answer your question, that guitar is a keeper. I'm keeping it. And even though I probably could have worked out some kind of compensation deal, what I worked out with them was I get to keep that. And then if I ever don't want it, I can't sell it to anybody. It has to go back. It's on loan. So, but it's on loan as long as I want. And I plan to pay. Lex Garnier? Lex? Call him Lex. Lex says, which one is it? It's the X10. I would love to try more. So, but I'm a little afraid to. I really, really am happy with this X10. I'm happy with it. I play it a lot. It's definitely my go-to acoustic for sure. It's the one that probably gets, in fact, without no question about it. So you guys know, the two acoustics I'm pointing out behind me, which one is the Godin nylon string, which is a semi-hollow thin line, a classical style guitar. That one and the Emerald are the two most played acoustics I own. Minus the Kiesel headless, but that's for travel. Like I take that traveling. I don't use that so much in the house. Those are the two I use in the house because they're louder. So really, really good. Lex also wants to know, did you keep the guitar from the Guitar Center trade video? I do have the guitar from the Guitar Center trade video. It's downstairs. It's the answer. There was a question on, we had a question, not you guys, whether or not I'll do a deep dive on it or not. I just don't know. So it's, what's tough is, as you guys know, I've revamped the studio to do more deep dives, but like this week, I went to California. That was 3 days, 1 day travel there, 1 day to be there and 1 day travel back. Cause it's a 7-8 hour drive. I drive pretty slow. So it throws my week off. Let's see. I think it's always funny when you guys, did you keep this? Did you have that? I always I don't know, maybe should we put that in the update? There was a person who once suggested that on my website, I should have my current gear, just what I have, if people are curious about that, but I don't know. It's like I always said, guys, I'd love to keep everything. It's just, physical space and money and all those things. You just can't justify it all. So stuff goes, but if it goes, you'll always see it's because it's like I think this saying that I love, a buddy of mine gave me, I don't remember, about a year ago, and I love it. And the word that I loved was the word that was curated. Like, I have a collection of guitars, and because of how long I've been doing this, I don't have a collection of guitars. I have a curated collection of guitars. Now, technically, everybody has a curated collection. But what he said that was great, that I love, is when I say I have a curated collection of guitars, I don't mean I have a Strat. I mean I have the best Strat I've ever played. I don't have an ES339. I have the best ES339 I've ever played. Like, I've owned, many of that guitar, and I've refined it through the years to basically find the one that speaks to me the most. So what happens is, in the collection, that's really if you're curious and if you're into this like I am, and just love guitar too much, maybe too much, the curated part is the interesting part, because I guess if I was going to say to somebody, like if somebody said, Phil, do you still have that Strat? And I said, yes. And they go, is it your best Strat you've ever played? And I go, yes, that's the best Strat I've ever played. So that's staying. It's going to be really hard for something to swap that out. But if somebody said, hey, Phil, is that, this Nags right here, is that the best Nags I've ever played? No. Larry Mitchell's personal Nags is the best Nags I ever played. So I can't have that one. So I have this one. But so in other words, what I'm saying is I love that guitar, but if something better came along, a better Nags, maybe I would move along and go. And that's why, like I said, I like that. And then the pic says curated means to have been selected by someone or people that know about the subject. Yes. You see what I'm saying? It's like this thing that you just kind of, as you refine your collection. So I like that. So I like that term. In reference. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes any sense. Okay, let me go over here. Antique Rocker says, hey man, what's up with Stu Mac's logo on their website? They put an inlay on the 10th fret, screwed up the trademark. How would you fix that in a real guitar? Wait, what? Let's go to Stu Mac's website. So what's wrong with their logo? I'm looking at it right now. I want to share it with you guys, but let me go here. I think this is the logo he's talking about. All right, let's read his thing. Let me go back to it and read it again, because I'm still a little off on it. He's saying they put an inlay on the 10th fret. Oh, is that because what you're saying is... I don't think so. That's not the way I'm seeing that. Oh, that's weird. I see what you're saying. Okay, so let's show this. I think what he's kind of putting... You know what? Can I just go to a bigger Stu Mac logo? So let's pull this up. Yeah, it's weird. This makes me laugh. Makes me wonder... Oh, no, I want the logo. Stu Mac logo. All right, images. All right, here's something we can work with. Oh, it took me right back to their site. All right, let's just do this. Okay, so we're looking at this stuff right now. Okay. And this is basically what he's talking about. So that, obviously, the two dots we're saying that's the 12th fret. So however we look at this, we have a problem, right? Because if it was the 12th fret, then essentially the 14th fret would be 2 away. So that can't be the 14th fret. So we would assume that the 14th fret is to the left. So then what we're looking at then is that, and so here's what's weird. So basically what he's pointing out is that the 2 dots, which would be the 12th fret, essentially the next dot should be 2 frets away in either direction. So it doesn't matter which direction this is going. It should either be the 10th fret or the 14th fret, and it's not working. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, okay? One, let's start with the very possible. I'm going to give you two possible answers why this is messed up. One is very possible that StewMac hired a marketing company and they made this logo, or somebody and they didn't know guitar and they messed it up. That's possible. I just recently deal with an issue where I bought a device that was rather expensive, and the company in all their marketing pictures had a certain type of solid state drive with it, and so I went to go buy that solid state drive, and it's because that solid state drive was incompatible, but the marketing company that had hired to do the pictures put the wrong thing. So it could be, like I said, artistic license. However, there are guitars like classicals and all kinds of stuff that have double dot frets in different places other than the 12th fret. I'm trying to think of like a reference right now. I mean, I recently just reviewed one within the last year where it was like one dot and then a couple space, two dots, and then a couple space, two dots. I mean, there are other things. So yeah, who knows? Max says it could be a ukulele fretboard. This is the problem. You don't have a real reference because it's so shallow. The humor of it is there's a humor to the idea that a Lutherie guitar company would have a logo of a fretboard that is actually incorrect. Is funny as hell. But and it's possible that, like I said, it was an artistic license. Whoever they had do it is messed it up. But I have a feeling that they probably had a guitar neck that they were referencing, and that one is correct because like I have seen it. I'm trying to think of like a reference. Let me see if I can find one. Like a lot of acoustics, because you're probably thinking StewMac and you're thinking electric guitar. Just think of it as like acoustic guitars. I wish I could think of the guitar video I did, because I literally just did a couple acoustic guitars and that's what it was. There was like a bunch of double dots on it. Like the double dots was on the 5th fret. So you know what? That's what we should do. Guitar with 2 dots on the 5th fret. Let's see if I can pull it up. Guitar with 2 dots on 5th fret. And what comes up? Come on, images. Somewhere. Oh, man. Really? Guitar with 2 dots on the 5th fret. And it just pulled up tons of electric. Oh, there you go. This is it. See? I knew we'd solve the problem. I just don't know how to get a picture of it. I'm looking at the picture. Let me do this. Okay, go to the web. So if you're looking here, see this acoustic guitar? So in theory, looking at their logo now, their logo would be correct if this is, and this is in the 5th fret. So I was wrong about the fret. So it's obviously 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. There's your 5th fret. So weirdly enough, 7th fret has 2 dots. I just, like I said, if you watch my videos recently, there's a thing where it's like this. So there was 2 dots, and then I just remember looking at it going, it's weird. I've seen that before, but it's not common. So here's what I think we're looking at when we look at the StewMac logo. We're looking at the 2 dots absolutely being the 7th fret. Let's go back. You know, by the way, can I just point out, this is about as nerdy as you can get. I would like to point out that if you're hanging out on a Friday afternoon dissecting the accuracy of the StewMac logo, you're my peeps. This is it. This is my dream. By the way, literally, I'm not kidding. This is my dream. Like one day I hope I can hang out on a Friday night and argue how off a logo is from a guitar with some friends. Would be literally like if somebody wrote that down on a piece of paper, I'd be like, yes, that'd be my dream. So if we could add a cold beer and some jalapeno poppers or something, this would be like the perfect Friday afternoon. Anyways, yeah, let's go back. I got to go back to the StewMac logo, cause I'm pretty sure, I just want to make sure, I'm pretty sure, we're correct. Yeah. So here's what we're looking at, guys. This is it in the corner. And I'm pretty sure that in this scenario, I think they're calling that the 7th fret, and that would explain why we would have a dot here. And so that would be the 5th fret right here when I'm pointing at the dot. Or if I flip it, it doesn't matter. It would be the 9th fret. So good catch on that being strange. And so, you'd think that's something I would just have ingrained. Like, no, this is what it is. It's just weird. It's just like I said, I've only encountered that on acoustic guitars. And so, it's something that I never put a second thought on, like, why is it like that? So I don't even know. So I'll probably look it up. Somebody in the comments is probably going to be like, here's why it's done that way. I just remember, like I said, I've done videos and probably worked on guitars in the past that were like that, and just again never thought of anything of it other than I don't know, this person puts 2 dots there. So I'll have to know. I'll you know what I'll do? I'll for fun for you guys, I will send a message to the vice president at Stu Mac. He's a pretty cool guy, and say, hey, this came up on the Friday show about your logo. You want to give us some insight on what it's referenced from? Because now it looks like it might be referenced off the, acoustic guitar that has the dots. Devil's Slide 1 says, why isn't the podcast updated on iHeart? I have been horrible at getting the podcast updated because of I just have excuses. That's all it is, man. I can give you another excuse. I always give excuses why I run behind. I will. Tomorrow is Saturday. I can tell you, this is what I can tell you. So instead of giving you excuses, let's just tell you what's going to happen. Tomorrow when I get up, I'm going to have coffee and I do the podcast. So I will literally edit them and put them out as the audio platform. So it'll catch up. Actually, you know what? I should give myself credit. I should give myself credit. There's a reason why they're not updated. I forgot. Okay. It's not actually my fault. Well, it is, but not totally my fault. The reason why they're not updated is not only do I pay for the podcast, the audio podcast, you have to pay a fee every month, to get your podcast out. You're only allowed so much time to upload, so many hours of upload. And I reached the end of it this month. So what happened was I fell because they don't carry it over. So basically I get so many hours to upload a month for the fee I pay, which is like $30 a month, right? I know it's not a lot of money, but hey man, $30 is $30. So anyways, I pay $30 and I can upload as much at like 10 hours or something like that, or 8 hours. It's pretty reasonable. The problem was I fell behind, as you know, and then I pumped out like 4 or 5 early this month. And then it goes, you're out of time for the month. You can either buy more time at a higher rate or wait till March 1st, and then I get my allotment back. So that's what happened, because it doesn't let me carry it over. So I was like, okay. I was like sitting there going, when you were talking, I'm like, yeah, I screwed up. Why did I screw up? And I'm like, that's why I screwed up, because I was just waiting. So I will fix that tomorrow, because tomorrow is the 1st. Perfect. Let's go to Aaron, who says, howdy, Phil. By the way, thank you for the super huge chat. Thank you, the super chat. It says, I have a Les Paul style guitar that I want to put active EMGs in, but the cavity is not big enough to support the battery. Any suggestions? Okay. By the way, love the Badlands guitar I bought from you. It's the best. Thank you, from Texas. Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Because I think you have one of my personal ones, right? If I'm doing this correctly, I think in my head. So let's back up to the Les Paul. The EMGs in the cavity, you should have room to do that. So the reason I think you don't have room to put your battery, I don't know if I said battery a second ago when I think I said EMGs. Here's the issue. Let me just tell you what the problem is. You have a couple options to put a 9-volt battery in your Gibson Les Paul. The best one I'm going to give you is the problem you're having is if you have a real Les Paul, a Gibson, I shouldn't call it a real Les Paul, but if you have a Gibson Les Paul, what happens is you have extra long potentiometers. So they're very long shafts, and they usually go onto a metal plate. So I'm assuming you have the metal plate and the shafts. You could just have the shafts, but I'm going to say you have a plate. And sometimes they're in a tray, which is even more problematic. But either way, the problem is they're sucking up all the room in that cavity. So one fix, which is not easy, but very effectively cheap, is you can buy 4 new short shaft potentiometers. Don't get the ones that are so short they go through pickguards, but get shorter regular shaft potentiometers and take out the old ones, solder in the new ones. And, oh, wait, you're going to have to do that anyways. What am I talking about? This is easy. Your problem is already solved, buddy. Your problem is solved. Here's why it's solved. You can't keep those original potentiometers. You don't want 500Ks in there with those EMGs. You want to go to 25K. So you should yank out those long shaft potentiometers out of your guitar, all your guts, because that's what's coming out, all the guts. You're going to drop in the EMG guts, which are going to be the 25K dime-sized potentiometers. It's going to be very small, okay? And they're going to go right in there. You're going to just kind of line them all up, put them in there, and then you're going to have way more than enough room. You're going to have enough room not only for a 9-volt battery, but you're going to have enough in there for the foam. You're going to wrap some foam to hold the battery still and stuff. So you're totally fine. You're going to be set. And just keep as much of the original electronics out of Les Paul intact. And that's it. You're done. Obviously, you could cut in a battery compartment into the back of the guitar. I don't suggest you do that. And sometimes, if you are shallow on room, you can cut a hole in the center of the back plate, the plastic back plate, and put the battery compartment in there, and it will pull the battery up a little bit, and you give it a little bit more room. But either way, you have enough room because you're going to yank those potentiometers out. So you should be good. I'd really be curious if that's not the case with yours. So, But that's going to be the thing. But either way, I was like, yeah, you have to swap them out. And I'm like, yeah, I never thought about it. Yeah, I have to swap them for the 25K. You know what's funny is sometimes it's like taking a test. I'm just like, oh yeah, how do I do that? That's how you do it. Okay. Let's go to Clan of House Cats. He says, they said they refretted a full nitro Fender custom neck. Okay. Saved most of the nitro from chipping away on the fretboard on its edge. Almost like it didn't happen. Fantastic. Anytime you don't have to do repair work is great. And new frets. It's nice. You didn't say what kind of frets. I'm curious. I'm assuming you put some jumbo frets on there. Brad Guitar Miller says, happy Friday. I have a Gibson Les Paul Classic dual P90. I really want a humbucker in the bridge. I was thinking about routing for a DiMarzio P90 Super Distortion. Thoughts? So you have a Les Paul Classic with dual P90s. I got that. But you want to put a humbucker in the bridge. You were thinking of routing it? Because that's where I'm confused. You don't have to route it if you're putting in or you can put in the DiMarzio P90 Super Distortion. I'm not a big fan of modding a guitar on an idea. What people sometimes don't think about, and I do, because it's just something I kind of have in context a lot. A lot of our guitar heroes, they mod their guitars like crazy, but they get them for free. I didn't think about it until I got the YouTube gig, and a company's like, we'll send you a guitar. And I'm like, oh, I might as well do something to it. Right? You're a little bit more haphazardly with a guitar when it's not your hard-earned dollars on it. That's why I always said, every review I do, I try to be as honest as possible. But the one thing sometimes I can't talk about is what it feels like to spend the money. So I try to defer from that. And the thing, like, in other words, I try not to tell you, like, this is a great value, even though I didn't have to buy it for this video. It's a tough thing, right? But if I do buy it, I tend to give you that value, like what did it feel like to spend that kind of money? So in this case, the problem is when you route a Gibson Les Paul, and you modify it, the worst case scenario, of course, is that you're not happy with what you've done. And now the guitar's value has been seriously diminished. And, it's just it's a no-win. I have no reason to believe you wouldn't like a P90 shaped humbucker to drop in there, and it'll be fine. And in fact, it might even better. Like I said, sometimes they give you a punchier sound that you normally wouldn't get from specifically a normal size humbucker space. So I like non-marring modifications. I've said this before. My wife, who's very understanding of my addictions and my issues, is she's got one line. She holds the line on one issue, right? What's the saying, right? She's only going to die on one hill. Here's the hill she dies on: modding guitars. She's very against it. Here's where she's okay. So because I push. You'd think with a wife that's nice enough to be like, whatever guitar you want, I don't care, and as long as you don't mod it. You think, I'd be like, okay, I won't mod it, but I push that boundary every day. But I do. We negotiate. Like, for instance, this Ibanez RG 565, I modified it with just different color pickups. I didn't change any of the stuff in it. And same with this Nags. I modified the pickup rings and the knobs, but I left it, and the switch tip. I left everything else the same. Well, I did swap the pickups. I'm sorry, swap the pickups. But you get the idea. Everything can be retrofit back. The reason why she's like this, okay, is my wife has one benefit that most people's husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, don't have. She worked in a music store for a decade. So she saw our peeps, right? She saw us. She knows what this is, right? This show does not confuse my wife. There's no situation where I was like, I don't know why people watch Phil on Fridays and hang out. She goes, of course. She's like, they're all nerds. This is what they do. Right? She doesn't call us nerds though. But she just says like, yeah, there's lots of them that like this stuff. However, what she learned, this is what she learned from, in fact, if you watch some of the bonus podcasts with her on the second channel, they're audio only. I think we talked about this and I think she goes into detail this. What she learned from owning a music store about musicians, guitar players specifically is, guitars are mostly parking money. You don't lose a lot of money on guitars. You can lose half. And some people will go, that's horrible. But literally, you can buy so many things and not get anything for it. So the expenses are not as much as you think. So what I mean by that is if somebody spent $1,000 on a vacation, had a horrible vacation, that $1,000 is gone. The money's gone. If you spend $1,000 on a guitar that's horrible, you'll probably get $500 of it back. So it was a $500 mistake, not a $1,000 mistake. So when my wife sees mistakes like that, she doesn't go, oh, you lost $1,000 on that mistake. She goes, when I sell it and I go, I only got $600. She goes, oh, it's a $400 mistake. Doesn't make it good, just makes it obviously within reason. So she's kind of seen all the things we do. The one thing she noticed was from me doing so many repairs over the years and just watching people shove money into guitars and lose them, because my wife would have to sometimes be on the wrong side of that conversation. So here's my wife, and she would go, and you could just see it in her eyes. Somebody come in and go, hey, I want Phil to install these tuners, and I want him to route out this pickup and put this pickup in, and I want him to modify this, and I do all this stuff. And then she's like, okay, and she's like, parts are $410, and Phil's labor is $880, and so you're looking at $590 and tax on you don't tax the labor, but you tax the parts, and so it's like $600. And they go, okay. Now, one hand she's happy because we're working and we're paying the bills with the work, but my wife would also tell you like 6 months later when that guy comes in and goes, yeah, I just don't love it. I want to trade it in to you guys, sell it to you for something. And she's like, okay. And she's like, well, the guitar normally sells for $1,000. So we want to give you $600 in trade. However, with these modifications, we think it's worth $800. So you see what I'm saying? We're gonna give you like $450 for it. And he's like, wait, what? No, I put $600 into it. So it's like, I was thinking it's worth $1,000 plus, she's like, no, the mods devalued it. And so, one of the regrets I have, it happens, it just happens. I didn't do it on purpose. But when I did the trade-in guitars at Guitar Center video, somehow there was a small clip of footage that didn't get caught correctly. I don't know what it was, but we didn't get it. I think we had turned off the cameras and finally, started doing something else. And then the guy behind the counter said, if any of these guitars were modified, we would have gave you less. And I'm like, oh, we all said it at the same time. We should have got that on camera. Because they said that. They did say that. I think he says something like it in the video. You might see that. But so without a doubt, Guitar Center confirmed that if you modify your guitars and try to trade them in, they're not only going to not give you anything for the mods, they're going to devalue your guitars for the most part. Or they can devalue their guitars. So, so that's why I'm into no marring modifications. In other words, try to do modifications that you can reverse out and keep your stuff. Guitar Max from the Guitar Max channel said something, and I don't remember exactly the quote, so I'm going to misquote him, but give you the sentiment of what he said. If you're not familiar with his channel, he's really into inexpensive guitars. Like he's a channel that focuses on, like he loves these $200 to $500 guitars, and which is great. But one of the things he says is his favorite thing is buying used guitars that have been heavily modified because somebody just lost their ass on it. And, he's like going to win. He's like, I love it when somebody shoves some Seymour Duncans in a guitar, new tuners, and then I get to buy it for essentially the same price used as if it didn't have those things or less. And I have to admit, it's accurate, right? And that's that's even if you don't factor in the labor that you lose if you have somebody do it. That's why it's important to learn to do it yourself and reverse it back out. So, Brian says, put your mods back to original before trading or selling. Absolutely. It is important. I agree. Yeah. And it happens on everything too. I experienced it. I lucked out. I bought a new truck a couple years back. I got a deal on it. It was during COVID. Everything was horrible. You couldn't find a truck. When I bought my truck, there was one on the lot. One. Like I'm not kidding. It was a one. They had one. We were looking at the one truck they had in the lot and thinking about how it's not the one we were looking for. And then they just got a delivery, and then one of the trucks was the one I was looking at. So I got the truck, and very, boring story, but I didn't love the truck. It was good, but I didn't love it. So I got rid of it a couple years later, 2 years later, and I got a really good value for it because I got such a good deal. Even during COVID, it was really crazy. But the point is, the story is, the truck was a good, worked out pretty well because it went up in value and stuff. But however, because it was kind of unique, however, I did two things to it and I lost those things. And the two things I did was I put a level kit on it. So I lost the level kit. So I put a 1 inch or 2 inch level to make it level. And then I put side steps on it. So, and trust me, I was driving it when I sold it. I was driving it thinking I should take these side steps off because I'm like, no one's going to give me anything for it. And literally they gave you almost nothing for it. They added, whatever they added, a couple $100 for your side steps. So same thing. It was just like the guitar. So I was like, I should take them off. I was too lazy to take them off. So, on a side note, sometimes I feel like I have to justify my laziness. On a side note, I did do this in June. It was 115 outside, and the idea of sitting on a towel on the concrete, taking the side steps off, I was like, so I did the stupid thing where I rationalized, like, they're going to give me like a couple $100 and I spent like $6 and it's not really that bad, but I lost over a half on it. All right. So on the side steps, but it works out. 40 Watt Podcast. Hey, what's up? By the way, if you haven't checked out 40 Watt Podcast, first of all, 40 Watt Podcast, very good podcast. And then Steve from 60 Watt. There's a lot of watts going on in this. But anyways, 40 Watt Podcast is good to watch. And then you see 60 Watt Podcast Steve with Phil from 40 Watt Podcast. And I like it, except for they make me nuts because when I'm listening to the background, I hear Steve, who I know personally, say Phil, and every time he says Phil, I'm like, oh, what? I'm not making this up. I think I know I go for the joke a lot on the show, but it does catch me every time. I look up. I'll be working, listening, and Steve will say, well, Phil, and I'm like, oh, it's me? They're talking about me? And he's talking about the Phil from 40 Watt Podcast. Anyways, 40 Watt Podcast, Phil says, you need to be absolutely sure you love a guitar before doing major mods to it and understand that it's going to be devalued. Yeah, and it's just nice to be, hear that reaffirmed from multiple players because it is a thing. I absolutely agree. That's why I said take those mods out. It's just where you lose the most money. So same thing with speakers. Remember we had a conversation last week about speakers? Same thing. Lose money with speakers too that way. Okay. Okay, I'm jumping. So, Richard says 60 cycle Steve, Phil. Yes. Did I say 60? Yeah, it's 60 cycle Steve on with Phil from the 40 Watt Podcast. Am I saying this right? No, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot to say. Right? Okay. All right. Anyways, let's see. What else what am we going to talk about? Let's go to the next subject. All right. We have Rob who says, hey, Phil, can I use super glue to glue down a flake of paint right in near of the neck joint of my Fender Strat, or is there something better? It's about the size of a nickel. I don't want it to fall off. Yes, you can use super glue. Absolutely. I'm not looking at it and I'm not a finish guy, but I've done enough of these kind of repairs that first I can just affirm the most important part. It can be done. I've done it and I'm not good at that. Depending on I'm not looking at it. So depending on the situation is the type of super glue you want to use. There's different kinds of super glue and viscosity. Like think about this, like there's really thick, there's regular, there's a bunch, but let's just keep it easy, right? There's regular, which is what most of you, if you buy super glue from your grocery store, it's going to come out. It's kind of goopy, right? Consistency. It's not thick and it's not running like water. And then there's a thicker kind, and then there's a really thin kind. And of course, they actually have names, but I just want you to understand the concept. But anyways, depending on the situation is what type of those glues you want to use. And that's what you want to do some research on and then blend it out. What's nice is Nathan, who is a finish expert, who is a good friend, the last couple times he was in town, he's was doing wrestling and stuff. Anyways, I don't know why I'm going on this tangent. What I was going to tell you is my plan is to take some of this stuff and have him do maybe some content for us and do some finish work, patching finishes, because he's not only does finishing work. A lot of that stuff won't help you guys or me, you know, how he's finished guitars in factories, but he's also had to fix a lot of guitars like what you're dealing with. And I was going to tap his brain on some finish work and maybe film it so we have it on the channel and use some resources. So this is Rob, just another reminder that I need to do that. But yeah, it can be done. I would do some research before you do it from somebody more qualified than me, though. And that's my suggestion. Romero says, "Hey Phil, my 2008 American Standard Strat has 2 screws drilled into the bottom of the stock bridge pickup. Any ideas as what their purpose is? I'm the original owner. Haven't modded at all." So underneath your stock pickup of your American Standard Strat, there are 2 screws drilled into the bottom of the stock bridge pickup. So I'm not reading that they're screwed into the guitar. They're screwed into the actual pickup itself. So there should be 4. So let's just start with it easy. There should be 4 screws on the bottom of your pickup screwing the plate onto the bobbins. In some cases, there could be 2. I mean, I'm not looking at it. So let me just tell you without looking at it, let me tell you what should be under the hood in your Fender Standard Strat. You pull the pick guard out, and here's what you should see when you're looking down at it. There should be 1 screw, usually black, with a wire soldered to it, screwed into the body. Okay, and that's a ground. So that should be there when you pull this up and look at it. That's the only screw I can think of that you should see that's besides your pick guard screws that you've taken out to get your pick guard out. Looking at the back of the pick guard, you should have no screws in your single coil pickups at all. You should just have this 2 screws that come through the top of the pick guard and go, to adjust it with the either surgical tubing or springs. And then your humbucker is going to have the 2 long screws, same thing, attaching it to the pick guard, usually with springs. And in some cases with Fender or Kiesel guitars or whatever, there's 3 screws. So 1 on the treble side and 2 on the bass side, and that's just so it's a design to keep the pickup from not being tilted, so you can adjust it. Basically, think of those 2 screws on the side as a way to adjust it, make it perfectly flat or tilt it a little bit. And then on the back plate of the pickup, you could see 4 screws or 2 screws, and again, they're just attaching the plate on. That's it. So that sounds right. If you're looking at something different than what I said, I just don't know what could be underneath there that you're seeing. But all of those things are normal. So, yeah. Okay. Let me go and refresh this. And we have the doctor. The doctor says, new 35. Of course, the doctor. Of course, you're signing as doctor and you're going to have a $3,500 guitar. Just go. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm just busting your chops. $3,500 guitar. He says, new $3,500 guitar had scratches not shown in the pics. Shop stopped responding to emails when I ask for a partial refund. Do I leave a bad Google review? And you can because sometimes they'll care about the Google review and then they'll reach back out to you. But I kind of look at Google reviews. I look at the final review as a nuclear option. You usually go that way. You've decided that it might, just like the nuclear option, it might be enough to make them take notice and do, but it's also going to be the thing there's sometimes they go with the whole, well, they've already done the damage and they give us a bad review. We're not going to fix it. What I would tell you is this: when dealing with a seller and you're unhappy as a customer, You need to get out of the mindset of like they need to fix this. They. Okay, because although you're right, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you're wrong to think that way. I'm saying get out of that mindset. It's not going to do you any good. You need to change tactic, is what I'm trying to say. So there are multiple tactics when dealing with somebody when you want to get your way. Right? So I'm trying to say it as nice as I can, but look, you have an issue, you want it resolved. It's just really simple, right? It's really simple. First of all, if you throw out a suggestion like, hey, I would like a partial refund, here are the issues, and they're going dark on you. First of all, keep in mind the internet is, just the internet. You can, people ignore emails and texts and stuff. You can just call them if they have the ability to call them, talk to somebody. You will never get as much done as what you do when you talk to a physical person, whether it be on the phone or a Zoom call or in person. People treat each other differently. I mean, you guys are here, right? Hanging on Friday, the internet. People treat different people differently in the comment sections and than they do in person and, in the street. So you'll get a little bit more done when you talk to somebody physically. Now, that's an option. The other option is you could suggest that they suggest an option. You're like, hey, I'd like a discount on this. And then they go dark. After they don't respond, you respond back with, hey, I haven't heard back from you. If that's not acceptable to you, I would love to hear any suggestions you might have because I just want to resolve this, right? Look, the more you do that stuff, the more you're going to decide that they need the nuclear option, like they need a bad review, right? And think about how much worse they're making their own review. If you were reading a review, I got a guitar and it had scratches and they wouldn't give me a partial refund as a bad review. I had a guitar and I've attempted to contact them multiple times and they will not respond to anything is a worse review because everybody who reads a negative review, okay, let's say you read a review and it says, hey, I went to this, restaurant and the food was terrible. That could be the restaurant and that could just be the person. You don't know this person. You don't know what their taste bugs are like. You don't know what their standards are. You don't know anything. But if I read a review, and I'm just using the analogy of restaurant, that said, I went to this restaurant, the food was terrible, and they wouldn't talk to me about it. I'd be like, well, that's the last thing I want to hear. I don't want to hear if I have a problem, I'm getting the silent treatment. Because here's why. We all understand something can go wrong. We just don't know in that what went wrong, how much of it was you, this person we don't know, or them, the seller, right? But when they won't work with you, when they refuse, like, hey, I gave them several options, they wouldn't do response. And you document all that, and then you break it down into a smaller thing. By the way, you could cheat now. You can write a long review, like a 2-paragraph thing, like talked about this before. You'd be like, go type everything that went wrong, and then put in ChatGPT and go, give me a 3-sentence version of this, and ChatGPT will give you a version, and you can ask ChatGPT like, give me a more professional version, or give me a more, something version, and refine it even more and drop it in there. But it would be nice to have more data about the experience, okay? And again, more opportunities for them to either take care of you or mess up even more and then confirm the problem. One of the issues is, sometimes they're going to come back later and go, oh, we didn't get your messages, or we were out of town, or something happened. So you want to make sure you do that. Also, I like to suggest an option, like here's what I think is going to rectify the situation. But again, I always say, but I'm open to hear your ideas as well, that's definitely important. And then also keep in mind, all that really helps in a new world where we buy with credit card money and all that stuff. You have other avenues like through your PayPal, your bank and stuff, especially if you have documentation. I have never, ever, this is me thinking like, is that ever? I think maybe once in all my life, once had an issue with something like PayPal or a bank where they wouldn't help me. Maybe. But usually I try everything through the pleasant accord of things like, hey, this is my issue. Can you help me figure it out? Can we get it resolved? I'd like this. And then usually it's about them giving you out options that you just don't like, Like, how about we give you $5 off? I'm like, well, I don't want $500 off a $3,500 guitar for it being scratched, right? That's like, here's something else. Here's another suggestion. But usually what you want is back and forth, because I take that back and forth and that's what I send to dispute. I'll go, hey, I'm having trouble with a seller and here's what they're doing, right? And usually what you're trying to do, God, I mean, like, I don't know what you're trying to do. Let me tell you what I'm trying to do. I'm usually trying to get them to acknowledge the mistake in the communication back and forth, which is helpful for the paying party, which is the bank or the PayPal. So they can see, like, once the seller says, yeah, I understand scratches happened, right? Especially if you're sending pictures and stuff. We do live in a world now, unfortunately. Dale says PayPal will not protect you. I literally have them protect me all the time. Maybe Dale, it's possible you could be having a total different experience than I do, because there's different PayPal accounts, but I have excellent luck with PayPal. So just giving you my reference, okay? But also, like I said, it could be in how you're interacting with PayPal and stuff. I find I've had PayPal literally give me back money on something that the other side was not, like, they were not agreeing to anything. And PayPal was like, based on this correspondence, we're just going with this. So, but again, everybody's mileage may vary. Everybody's got a different thing. But anyways, back to the suggestions for what to do. Just, I would keep coming back at them with different options and stuff. And if you're getting nowhere, then leave the full review. And and leave as many reviews as you can, as many places as you can. It's nice. And I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, that's pretty much the big one. I understand it sucks, but also make sure you're sending them pictures, documentation, and stuff. Because again, not that should be the case for them, but a lot of sellers now are just like, they're like, this person's lying. They're just trying to get a discount or a deal. So, and I can tell you right now, all the stuff that doesn't work, all the stuff work is like, people send the same things all the time. I buy expensive guitars every week, and and so you're like, that's somehow you're the authority of that. It's not about that. Like, they don't care if you're, if you have money. They don't care if you're smart. They just trying to figure out if you're honest or not. Or if they're dishonest, then they don't care at all, and then you have to deal with that. So, okay. Bitmat says, Phil, I just got a Kiesel. Did on the Kiesel sale, I got a super pumped. I got my first 7-string. That's very awesome. A Kiesel 7-string is definitely something that I would love to have. It's just, I've been pushing back because I'm like, right now, if I get a 7-string, something's got to go. A 7-string's got to go, and I don't want to give up what I have. But I really want a Kiesel 7. So, yeah. Matt Sanders, by the way, speaking of what I was talking about earlier, he's saying document. That's exactly better put than I just put it. Okay. Fast Freddy says, what was the guitar of the week? I did not get a guitar of the week ready because I literally was driving 7-8 hours this show. So, there was a 50-50 chance, and maybe 64, there was no show today at all. If I couldn't get here in time and get the show going, because again, I was traveling for the Guitar Center. We're just calling it a podcast, but it was essentially the interview discussion. It was really a discussion. The CEO of Guitar Center and I discussed my comments about Guitar Center that I've been public about, and what they felt about those comments, and what they've done because of those comments, and what things they're not going to do, and stuff like that. It's very, very interesting interview. In my opinion, it was good, and good on a lot of levels. I think most people come away from it like I did, like, wow, I was impressed with a few things they decided to do, and a couple things I was like, I guess they just don't want to do those things. But so ultimately net positive, in my opinion. So I thought about just grabbing a guitar, but I don't really have a guitar. Like, there's nothing really around here to plug into and do. I mean, maybe I can grab a guitar from the back wall. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, Brent says he can't wait to see the CEO interview. One thing I will share with you is this. This is in the interview, and it's kind of taking away, but it's on the back half of the podcast right now, so I kind of don't mind sharing with you. Let me pull it up. It's in here. Actually, I have them on my computer. So this was kind of fun. Let me open this up. And so the new CEO of Guitar Center, which has started, by the way, if you guys don't know the story, it goes like this. A few months ago, somebody asked me what I thought about the new Guitar Center's new philosophy of selling expensive high-end guitars and going for the professional market, yada, yada, yada. And of course, I did an instant reaction. Is why this show is live, because I instant react to things and try not to filter, although I try to keep it clean, but when I'm tired, that's not possible. There's no way. Anyways, so I reacted to it, and of course, the show, the title of the videos are usually the subject we talk about the longest, or maybe it's something most interesting. And of course, sometimes the businesses get eyeballs. So if it's something sensational, we'll put that. So the title of the video was like, "Why Guitar Center's plan is not going to work," right? Something like that, right? Why it's going to fail. Guitar Center is going to fail, whatever, right? It was in context of the discussion. And by the way, it was ChatGPT or whatever, the AI that YouTube uses, that suggested it. And I was like, okay, that's a better version of what I was doing. So I put it out, and that got their attention. So they came out. So one thing that happened that is interesting, and I'm kind of giving away because in the beginning of the video, we talk about this, is that the discussion happened here. So let me show you this. So what you're looking at looks like, hey, look, it's a Guitar Center, right? But if you look at the top, you see the plastic and stuff. This is a fake Guitar Center. So I'm going to share this with you. A couple of things. I have to be careful of what I share because I was pretty good at not taking pictures of stuff I wasn't supposed to. So the only thing this is go to. The only thing I wasn't supposed to take pictures of, which I did, but I'm not sharing with you guys, so there's not gonna be an issue, was there was some guitars in there, obviously, that aren't out yet. So of course, Guitar Center doesn't want that leaked out. So here's another one. So this is, as you can see from the ceiling, where we're in is a warehouse. So in the middle of a warehouse, they built a Guitar Center. They just built it. It's just like, it looks like a Guitar Center. And that's why it has concrete floors, right? It's a warehouse. And essentially, this is a mock Guitar Center that they use to strategize, like, where things go and how customer flow works, and where stuff should be, and what's effective and what merchandise looks better. And when I was there specifically, there was a team there working on loss prevention. So they were working on like how to stop people from taking stuff besides putting locks and stuff, right? And so this is the brainchild of the new CEO. He decided that since they have 300 stores, and of course duplicating things 300 times is you just can't do that. You got to work it out. So they work it into a store. But of course, whenever time they do that, they're taking, you guys, some people have jobs and they know what it's like when the corporate guys come into town, right? And now all of a sudden everything's in disarray, right? So you can imagine when they need a store to mess with, what's going to happen is they're going to email the store manager and say, hey, we need to use your store for an afternoon. And they come down there, and now the store owners, the store manager and the employees have, look, if you have a boss, you got to make sure everything's set a certain way and do stuff. It's disruptive is what I'm trying to say. So one of the things he came up with, which I thought was interesting, was to build a store in the warehouse and that they could do without disrupting employees. And anyone who's ever had a job knows that's just the coolest thing ever. Could you imagine if your boss is like, hey, I duplicated your work area so I can work out some ideas and not jack with you all the time? It's just, that's a great idea. So I'm for that idea. Puddinhead said, oh, Fender can use a new CEO. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Fender ever talks to me. Well, it'll be interesting. That tells you exactly. Think about this. I've made the same criticisms publicly about the Fender CO as I have the Guitar Center CO, and nothing wrong with the Fender side, but the Guitar Center's reaction was, could we talk to you about it? And again, keep in mind, it's not like, my opinion matters in that weight. What it is they're like, you guys are here. They know the audience is listening, and they know this is what we're talking about, and they want to hear what we had to say. So I took some of your guys' suggestions and comments and took them to them. So like I said, it'll be out probably Sunday or Monday, most likely. Of course, it's because I release things like this to the patrons first. This is so that they can, if they see anything, they can suggest. They're almost like the editing team, the patrons. They go, hey, something here's not right or whatever, and then we can make adjustments. But yeah. So yeah, I was there, really cool. So I thought I'd share that with you. It was pretty interesting because I did, that's something new they had never done before. Mark says, I thought they were all fake. Bro. Nice. I know. There's always going to be jokes. Okay. Let's see. Dale says they wouldn't free ship a $2,000 item. So interesting. I don't know in reference to that. When I bought online with them, it's I get free shipping at certain numbers. Certain numbers I bought and I got free shipping, and sometimes don't. Okay. I'm just looking to see if any of you guys have anything about the Mock Guitar Center. They literally call it the Mock. Actually, they call it. So to be fair to them, I called it a Mock Guitar Center. They said yes, that's correct. I don't know if they were just being nice, like yeah, Phil called it that, so we'll stick with that name. But they call it. I had the picture and now it's gone. Hold on a second. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Let me go to the first one. I apologize. I had it up. This is it. Okay. I don't know if he says this in the podcast or not. I don't remember. But here it is. They call it, see, it says Beacon Street. They call this the Beacon. Basically it's the light that they're going towards. In other words, this is the ideal Guitar Center. What's funny is a lot of you, I know when you see this, you can't help but make jokes. I get it. I'm the same way. That's how I got in this mess in the first place. I was smart asking comments about them stuff. But what's funny is what's interesting is that's the concept is to build a Guitar Center and then try to make a perfect one and then duplicate it. So that's the irony of it. So when you're like, yeah, their stores suck. If you say that, you're like, well, yeah, they kind of know. Let me tell you, one thing you'll take from this podcast with him that I took away with is no defensive apologies of anything. Everything was like, every criticism was, yeah, they took it with his merit. He took it with merit, and he explained either why they're going to fix it, why it's been fixed, or why they're not going to fix it. But at no point in the hour interview did he say like, I never heard of that and that's not a problem. There was nothing dismissive there. So I thought that was interesting. I expect that on one or two things, but not the fact that he never did it was really interesting. So again, I hope you guys find it interesting. So, and you can make fun of me too, because you can see a couple times where I look like, if I look like I'm in the hot seat, I was like, I was. All right. Let's. Scrap Dog. This is great. Okay, and then we'll go on. Scrap Dog says, "Why are you not Sweetwater?" I actually asked that. Worse than you're saying it. I basically told him why Sweetwater's kicking their ass. This is true. I said it in the video to him. It's tough to say things like that in front of somebody. You watch faces. I watch his face when I'm talking, kind of like, okay, how's this going to go? Right. And I basically said, Sweetwater's kicking your ass. And like, what's the plan with that? And his responses were pretty good. Like I said, very good. He could have said like, what's a Sweetwater? It was good. It was a good, like I said, I loved it. So, WizDog says, "Hey Phil, did you see Robert Baker's video on Chipson?" I did not see the video. I saw the viral clip. Unfortunately, it popped right around when I was getting ready to go to California. Unfortunately, when I go, I know it sounds weird, but when I go to a trip like that, 1 day travel, 1 day there, 1 day travel back, 3-day trip, I have to do extra the 2 days before that because, so I literally get no free time for about 2 days. I have to work really hard. I have to double up those hours to get the stuff that's getting done. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't have got a video this week and stuff. So I didn't see it. But anyways, I'll put a link to it. If you guys didn't know, Robert Baker put a video out with like Joe Bonamassa and all these guys, and they were like literally looking at these Chipsons. This is a funny thing that happened. It's not in the podcast, and it was something I overheard them saying. When I say overheard, I heard the employees at Guitar Center saying this, that when I was standing around, right, waiting, doing stuff, right, there was a couple employees, and they said, and by the way, I don't mean like they said it and like, they didn't know I was there. They knew I was listening and stuff. They were there. It's like, not like they were keeping a secret, but they weren't specifically telling me to tell, like, tell your audience, this is a funny story, or, hey, Phil, you'll think this is hilarious. They were just talking freely, and they were very aware. I already shook their hands and introduced and stuff, so they knew who I was and knew what's going on. But anyways, they made a comment that originally, when they made the mock store, instead of all the inventory now, which is the correct inventory because they had to lay it all out, his store was just full of nothing but fake Gibsons. All the fake Gibsons that had been traded in and sold to Guitar Centers, apparently it's what they're at. They're there at the corporate headquarters. They just accumulate them up. I'm sure at some point they destroy them or whatever. I didn't ask, but they were basically saying like, when this started, it was just all fake Gibsons because they have so many of them because they take it in the shorts every time a store takes in a fake Gibson. So, it's funny. The reason I mirrored that up is if you haven't caught it yet, the whole Robert Baker video is about detecting a fake Gibson and what they see and what they don't see. And I've had this argument for years, and I feel like I've never won the argument on this, and so I'm okay with it, but I don't know what to say. Every time I talk about fake guitars, people are like, it's obvious. And I'm like, it's not obvious. People get screwed daily with them. And everybody's like, it's so obvious. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. To some experts, it is. To some, it's not. And also, there are better versions of fakes than others, but ultimately, every fake is a potential problem, because it's something that steals money. To me, if a guy sells you a fake Chibson for $2,000, it's just stealing $2,000. It's just stealing. It's fake. It's a con. It's a con. It's no different than any other con taking place. So I've never been a big fake anything fan. I've never been pro them in any way, and I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. I've seen with customers, bring them in, for repair. And you're like, this is fake. It's the worst information to give somebody. It's just, what's weird is to hear I never put into thought that Guitar Center is a victim of that. But obviously, I mean, think about this. You saw the pictures I showed you. They said, they didn't imply like every single hanger was a fake Gibson, but they had enough to fill up most of that place with fake Gibsons. And if you're doing the math, because I am, you could put 300 guitars in those racks easily to more than that. So if they only had 150 Gibsons and they were buying those things dirt cheap off people, you already see there. You could be anywhere between $100,000 to $250,000 easy. It's funny because of the missed opportunity was the CEO of Guitar Center. The missed opportunity was because of my reaction video. That was the discussion point we wanted to have, right? So in other words, like Phil said a bunch of crazy stuff about us. We want to talk about that. So, to either get more information from me to get a refinement of my critiques, or to discuss, what they're doing to, fix it, or maybe I misunderstood stuff. So the missed opportunity was because that was the focus of it. We couldn't talk about stuff like this, but I would love to do it again with Gabe, and this time go in with just a QA like that. Like, hey, how does fakes work? What do you do with them? How much does it cost you guys? How impactful is this? You guys know I did a podcast a couple months ago about the fact that they seized a crap ton of fake Gibsons, coming to the country. And I think everybody always makes the same jokes. It's funny. It's very dismissive. It's always like, it's a couple $100. It's a fake Gibson. But I'm like, but people get conned all the time. It's just, it sucks. And I think that's my mentality is, I'm not saying I'll never get conned by a fake. That seems too bold. It's not likely though, because I'm informed. And so I could be cavalier and be like, hey, if you don't learn yourself, you're an idiot. But the problem is I know the one thing that's important to know, which is people who take advantage are specifically looking for you. They're looking for the person who's not informed, and you're putting them in a position where they don't get to inspect enough, and they don't get it. So it's a very easy manipulation thing. Yeah, WizDog says not everyone is a guitar nerd that buys these. Exactly. In fact, usually it's con jobs are opportunistic by design. So it's usually what it is it's someone who's never owned a thing like a Gibson and they're presented the opportunity. Yes. Do I think there's people out there? It's like, haha, I'm going to buy, this guy's trying to sell a Gibson Les Paul for $800 and he's a moron. I'm going to buy it and sell it and make $3,000. And they're, obviously an idiot and they don't know what they're talking about and they get screwed. Maybe there's some justice in somebody trying to, take one over on somebody else getting taken over on. I could get with that. But a lot of times what it is someone who's never going to be able to justify or afford a $2,500 Gibson. And then there's an opportunity now to get one for $800, and $800 is everything to them. They probably barely have $800, but it's like, man, I would never spend $800 willy nilly, but for this once in a lifetime opportunity, right? And I know what that feels like, because what's funny to me is, when I took guitar lessons when I was a teenager, and I had this crappy little amp and this crappy little guitar, my guitar teacher one week came into the lesson. We were talking, and he was like, "Oh, I got a new Marshall cab." And, a Marshall was like, this is unobtainium. It was just nobody could get Marshalls. And he was like, yeah, I got a Marshall head, and he got a full stack. So he had a head and cabinet, and he finally got another cabinet. And I'm impressionable. You understand, I'm 15 years old, 15, barely 16 years old, very impressionable. And he said passively, he's like, I got a new Marshall cabinet. I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Right? Dude, I probably said, dude, that's awesome. And then he said, yeah, I got it for $100 from a pawn shop. They didn't know what they had. And I remember when I started driving and I got my car and I was driving, I went to pawn shops like all the time because I was convinced, like winning the lottery, I was going to walk in a pawn shop one day and be like, there's the thing that I want that I cannot afford. And this dumb pawn shop's going to sell it to me for a nickel. And all I ever saw was tons and tons and tons of crap that was overpriced. And I hear people all the time get those deals. I've never walked in a pawn shop and got a deal. I've always walked in a pawn shop and always seen, I got a Series 10 guitar for $300 and a Fender solid state 8-inch speaker amp for $129 when they're $109 new. So it's funny. And I don't think of myself as a bad person. Like, oh, I'm trying to find a dumb pawn shop to sell me this amazing thing for nickel. I was just looking for that opportunity, that thing, that moment where it's like, I'm going to get something I couldn't get. And because it's out there. And that's where I think of as people do that stuff. And that's when they end up with a fake. So Pablo says, are fake Fenders as prevalent as Gibsons? Well, I would say, and no data to back this up at all. So this is just gut feeling. My guess would be Gibsons are the first #1 fake guitar, just because they hold so much value. There are so many of them, relatively easy to fake because of the fact that so many of them are made in China anyways through the Epiphone lines and all the copies. So it's just really easy for those manufacturers to just go ahead and make them. If I was going to guess next, it would be Fender, which is ironic. The reason I say that is ironically is I think if you looked at volume of guitar sales, I think Fender sells more volume than Gibson. So you'd think in theft, they would go after the bigger seller, but dollar wise, Gibson holds more value. What I've seen now is everything is a fake now. Everything. They fake. I think somebody said they were faking Harley Benton's. I'm not making this up. I think it's absolutely true. I think I saw that. I've seen Mayonnaise. I did a video where a friend of mine bought a fake Mayonnaise, and that's where it really hit me, was because the smart ones are learning to fake the guitars that most of us have never seen in person. When he bought the fake Mayonnaise, which I did that video, I had never seen a Mayonnaise in person ever in my life. So he didn't know it was fake. By the way, he didn't bring it to me and goes, I bought a fake Mayonnaise. He brought it to me to set it up because it played horrible, right? And I had no reference of the guitar at all. I had never seen a Mayonnaise. It's not like I looked at them in Guitar World magazines or everything for years. I've never seen them anywhere. But what happened was it was really bad. The setup was really bad. It was just, fret sprout, everything wrong with this guitar. You could be wrong. But what happens over time, like a lot of people, is you start noticing not a thing about fakes, but you start noticing like things about guitars, like made in China guitars, made in Indonesia guitars, made in Korea guitars, made in USA guitars. There's certain things they do, right? Certain things you see. Like I've had it happen now where a company, and I'm going to pin this, I'm coming back to the minus, but I'm just saying I had a company reach out to me, and I'm never going to mention their name, but because I'm never going to work with them, but they reached out to me as a YouTuber, and they're like, hey, this is how they reached out to me. They said, hey, we build guitars, custom guitars. We want to send you a guitar and have you do a deep dive. We'd like to build you a custom one, and so in other words, send me one, do a video, and then build me a custom one. And you're like, look, if you had my gig, you'd say, hell yeah, too. What? Custom USA made guitar? And so I get a video and people watch it and I'll make money from that. And then I get a guitar and that, like, this is the dream, right? Like, we all should be so lucky. I get the guitar sent, and they were conning me. Here's the con. Because it started with the con. It started with, hey, we don't have one to send right now. What we're sending you is a demo model. So there's going to be some issues with it. So I'm thinking like, oh, okay, it's going to have play wear or scuffs. And you get it has issues. Like it had like glue glob issues, things that you just see. Like I can tell you what you see. Like if you send me a $200 made in China guitar, even if I go, oh, it's a pretty good guitar, I'm still going to go, yeah, here's some things you don't see on a $3,000 USA guitar or maybe a made in Japan guitar. So anyway, so I'm going through the guitar, but the flags for me were, first, metric bridge. I'm like, why would a US guitar company use a metric import bridge? That's weird, right? So, you pull out your Allen wrenches, you're like, oh, this is a 1.5 millimeter. Huh, interesting. It's weird that they're using the metric bridge. So it's an import bridge. Okay, well, they make good quality import bridge, but not this one. This bridge was a cheap one. And then, I did what I do in the videos. I take stuff apart. I'm looking at stuff, and here's what I figured out. The tuning keys were cheap. The nut was cheap. The bridge was cheap. All the materials were cheap. So I responded with a nice email, as you can imagine, very, very polished, very professional. Like, hey, man, on the guitar, thank you so much. I'm checking it out. I just have some questions for you. So you're making them here in the States, but why are you using like all inexpensive parts? And they responded with, oh, thanks, Phil, for asking. But they're like, to get the price down, we're trying to keep the price around $2,000 US, which is, is a really good price for a USA made guitar. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, like good parts are like, you'd be talking about $2,400 guitar. It's not going to really and for a USA made guitar, no one's going to, you guys are standing here. You tell me. I'd rather have a $2,400 made USA guitar with the right parts than a $2,000 guitar with all inexpensive, low grade import parts. And through this experience, I was like, this is interesting. Luckily for me, they were really bad. They said, oh, it's nitro lacquer, and it was poly. And I was like, oh, and it's thick. It was sprayed on heavy. And I was like, okay. But it did say made in the USA, right? On the headstock, it had their name. And through some period of time, I figured out, I won't even tell you, I'll tell you this part. I actually found the import version of their guitar. I thought, what are the odds I can find this guitar on AliExpress? So I went on AliExpress and looked, and it was probably 2-3 hours. You have to be a moron like me to kind of spend that kind of time to prove something to yourself. And I found the guitar, their design, not like a copy of their guitar. I found a guitar where it's like I could throw a logo on it too. And so they were ordering an AliExpress guitar, and I guess they were going to, hey, great business model, right? Send Phil McKnight an AliExpress guitar, tell him it's $2,000, even though they paid $180. Get 100 of his followers or viewers to buy these guitars. You starting to do the math here? Let's do the math, right? Let's have some fun. Can we talk about how much everybody would have been happy about this? So they're going to be into the guitar for $200. I said 180, but I just want to keep my numbers easy. Let's say 100 of you pull the trigger. Right? They sell 100 guitars. Their investment is $20,000. You pay $2,000 a piece for the guitars, right? Whoops, that's the wrong number. 2,000, right? And now here's what's great. And so minus their 20, they'd make $180,000 off of us. And here's the worst part. I would say out of the 100 of you, for sure, without any reservations at all, 20, 30 of you would never know you have a fake, because Phil McKnight, the YouTuber that you trust, because he takes guitars apart, and he should know, right? He's fixed guitars for 2 decades, right? He's supposed to know. He told me this is a good guitar. You probably know a few chords. You play pretty good. You just wanted a good guitar, and it looked exciting and unique to you. And now you have this. You have an AliExpress guitar so 30% of you don't even know you have a fake guitar, and so like I said, it's out there. Everybody's got a game to play is basically what I'm trying to say. And so back to the Minez guitar. What happened was, after time, same kind of thing with this other guitar. I was like, man, this is just doesn't look right. Why would they use these cheap pickups? Why would all these components be so cheap? This guitar, I thought a Minez was a quality instrument. And luckily, that pinged me to start looking at things. And the first thing is that when I Googled or went on their website to Minez and it said, oh, this is the wood that it is. Well, I did what I always do. I pulled a pickup out. I sanded the side of the wall of the pickup, looked of the wood, looked at it, and go. And I even did there's a poke test where you have a little, I don't know what you call it. It's like a needle I have, and I push, and it was obviously basswood, like poplar, basswood, whatever. It was really soft. It was supposed to be mahogany. Look, sometimes they can make mahogany really light and it really throws you off, but there's no mahogany that's going to like take a pin like basswood or poplar and stuff. What's the other one that's really light? There's one that's even softer than Palomino. Like, so it couldn't even be Palomino because it was super light. The guitar was super soft. And so now you're like, man, okay, this is the wrong wood. And so then luckily I did what I tell you guys to do. I took pictures and sent it to Minez. And they were like, yeah, this is not real. This is fake. And I'm like, you have fake? I mean, who the hell would fake a Minez? Like, no offense, they're great guitars, but what do they sell? Like, 3,000-4,000 a year of those? I'm rounding up. They probably don't even sell that many, right? Minez probably sells 1,000 guitars a year, right? So, so think about this. How many people are in the market for use Minez? It's not a lot of people. In fact, I bet you if I go on Reverb right now and look, somebody do that for me. Somebody go on Reverb and type in Minez and see how many guitars are sold. Just total guitars, electric guitars, new and used, right? I would say it's going to be a couple hundred maybe, right? It's not going to be like 4,000 guitars used. So again, there's not a lot of people out there looking for it. But what happened when I was doing I decided to do the video, what dawned on me was, but look what happened. Look how long it took me, because the whole time I was in denial. I know this is getting long on the tooth, this whole discussion, but I want to tell you guys how this whole process worked for me. I knew it was fake, but I was doubting myself because I'm like, I don't know. I've never tried a Minez. Maybe Minez just makes crappy guitars. Like, I was like, okay, and my friend's just an idiot, and he bought a crappy guitar, and that's just how it goes. And maybe all these guys that buy these guitars are idiots. Like, who am I to judge them? I buy dumb things too. And so think of this. Thanks, Reese. 595 Minez. And by the way, Guitar Circuit as well. Everybody else, Aeroholic, 596. So thank you. So again, not a ton of guitars on the market for sale. And so anyways, my point is, they clone everything. They try to, they try and angle every way they can. It's just how it works. So kind of beat that subject, guys. Let's button up the show. I know there was no guitar this week, but we'll do something extra fun next week. I promise. Let's do Zach, thank you for the super chat. Mark says, hey, Phil, what is the best neck size and scale length is best for someone with smaller hands? I really enjoy your show. I've heard all the theories over the years. In my experience, it's not as simple as, hey, if you're small hands, get a small neck. Your playing style has to do with how the neck feels more than anything else. So like I won't promise I won't leave you hanging with, no information. I'll give you a kind of a quick answer, but I want you to understand how important it is to have more than just that answer. If you roll your thumb over to the side of the fretboard, it's nice to have it rounded. Some players, whether they have big hands or small hands, the soft V on the back neck. So neck shape is really important, more so than neck size in some cases. Scale length is not huge. So for instance, most people can't tell the difference between 24 3/4 and 25 1/2. Most players are not doing that. What I mean by that is you're not seeing a whole lot of players that play Les Pauls going, I'd love to play a Strat. I just can't get my hands to work spread out that far. You're not seeing a lot of that. But if you have really small hands, and you could say that a 24 3/4 is going to be better. You could say a smaller neck is better. What I always think about is this. One of the necks that I think that is like, so let me just tell you where you can start if you want to look for a small neck and see how you like it. To me, the smallest necks on the market out there are going to be a lot of the Music Man necks, not all of them, but most of the Music Man necks are very, very small. And the EVH Wolfgang series, Indonesian ones, the Made in Mexico's, those necks tend to be on the smaller side as well. So those are good smaller necks you can check out. But also keep in mind that sometimes the setup, in other words, how high the action is, and the strings are going to have just as much effect as that. So it's like I said, when I talk about like if a neck's too thick, it hurts my hand. It's not so much that it's thick. I have some necks that are thick and they don't hurt my hand. It's also the type of carve, which is why we always discuss the carve. It's just to have that information. Whenever you ask a question like this, whenever somebody says, hey, what's a good neck? I'm going to point you in directions, but trust me, you need to go to a music store and just try guitars. And one of the things that's great is if you're a newer player, right? You know, a lot of people have concerns like, I don't want to go to the store and stand there and play in front of people. You don't have to play necks. You don't have to play guitars. You hold them. Just hold them. But don't just hold them. Hold them for a second. Just sit there with it. Think about it. Take a second. Like breathe, right? And go, what is it that I'm feeling here? And go, oh, I guess the arm feels good. Was my arm here or is my arm here? Is this good? Does this feel good? I don't like my arm up here, which is why I don't love acoustics that are like jumbo acoustics, right? Because I don't like my arm in this position when I strum. I like it down here. I just do. Same thing with my hand. I like my hand in almost like in a calm rested position at all times when I push down the first note. Some people, they like it more tense. So like I said, hold guitars. I've always said this. You don't have to be able to play guitar well or at all to know how a guitar feels. You just kind of feel the neck and how your hand fits in it. And what's funny is you can hold a neck for the length of, you don't have to do it for a whole song, but for a minute. And whether playing or not, in that minute, you'll discover something. So that's just something I suggest. But I would try those if you want to try small necks. And then, and funny enough, I don't think the EVH is right. There's a 25.5 scale. So it's funny to me. I bet you most players, if I handed you an EVH Wolfgang and a Gibson Les Paul, most players would agree that didn't know. Like you guys that know are going to be like, of course it's this. But I'm talking about players that know. And you guys that do know, kind of think about it for a second, see if you agree with this. I think most players, if you played a Wolfgang and a Gibson Les Paul, would think the Wolfgang is a smaller, shorter scale than Les Paul. Just because the way it was designed, the way it brings your arms in like this, and all of a sudden everything feels really easy. It's probably one of the most comfortable playing guitars I've ever played. And that's why I think they were smart enough to make hardtails and stuff instead of just all Floyd Rose. And that's because, sorry, losing my voice. And that's because when I got to meet Eddie Van Halen, I think I told you guys this story, right? I got to meet him and shake his hand. And I told the story before, but it's important because it really, really dials us in. So here's my pause right here. I don't know if my hands are big, but I'm 6 foot and I'm a bigger dude. Some of it, is fat and some of it's just the size, physical size. But anyways, my hands are pretty big. And when we were in line at this private event, a little small party, the EVH Wolfgang party, we were there. They told us that when we shake Eddie's hand, the process is we're going to shake Eddie's hand. We're going to talk to him for a minute, each person. And then we're going to stand next to him, take a picture. Okay. And, I'll go get the picture. Hold on a second. Because what I'm going to do is give you a scale. So here's the picture of me and Eddie without the glare. So this is so what year is this? 2009, VIP, access. That's me and Eddie. So you guys get a sense of scale, right? That's Eddie Van Halen next to me. So you get the idea. Now, why the story's funny is I've always heard he had big hands. That's why he plays great. By the way, I've already told you, Steve Vai and Paul Gilbert's hands are massively huge. Massively. Both about the same, but Paul Gilbert's hand's definitely bigger. I mean, huge. Larry Mitchell, my buddy Larry, same thing. Massive paws, man. Crazy. Right? Like I don't want to offend Larry because he's my really good friend and I love him. But like, you know how you, like if you get a kitten or a puppy and they're like, oh, they're going to grow into those things. Larry has not grown into his paws. Neither has Steve Vai or Paul Gilbert. And they're all very, very tall. So anyways, so what happens is we go to meet him and they say, shake his hand, talk to him for a minute, and then take the picture. And then they develop, okay. So, but they said to all of us, they go, do not squeeze his hand. And like, okay, don't squeeze his hand. Like, do not. So I'm like, okay. And it was just tough for me because I learned firm handshakes in the Army. Like that was the first manly thing I had to do in the Army was learn how to shake somebody's hand. Because like the unit I was in took it very seriously, to say the least. So anyway, so here's why the story gets funny. So we go up and I go to shake his hand and he crushes my hand. And my hand's like crush. And he's super nice. He's like, hey, how's it going? Crush. Like literally my hand is crushed because of course I'm not in the right position for strength. And my hand is like, I'm running a limp and my fingers are not, like everything's just crushed. And he crushes my hand a little bit and like firm shake, basically firm handshake, right? Very firm handshake. Things I got right away in 1 second. Firm handshake, small hands. I was like, oh, his hands are kind of small. Or I should have said, oh man, his hands are kind of small, but it hurt. So then I go over and afterwards we're talking, all my friends, Frank and my wife, Shauna, and my son was there. And everybody's like, man, Eddie crushed my hand. And they go, oh, I go, me too. He did it to all of us. And we're like, did they punk us? Like, is this a thing? Like, did they know Eddie is a firm handshaker? And they thought it'd be funny to tell us all this, shake his hand soft. But we don't know. But he did it to all of us. It was very firm handshake all the time. So the reason I tell that story is his hands were small. And then what's funny was instantaneously what I got from that was explain why his necks to me always been kind of small. Like maybe he preferred that. So Max said Eddie had strong fingers. You know, I'll tell you a funny thing and then I'd say it's the last thing, but we got to finish out a couple of super chats. No more super chats, please. I'm very fortunate in my life, first of all, to have a show like this every Friday and have you guys hang out and stuff. But one of the things I was very fortunate of is I get to meet and interact with super talented people and learn from them and then kind of maybe have this, this conversation with you guys. And one of the smartest guitar players I've ever met in my life, not heard of, but met in my life, said this amazing thing and I like to share it. Okay, and I tell you who it is, but you wouldn't know because it's not like he's famous. It's just he just does amazing guitar players. Another one of these ones where all amazed. If you saw him play, you'd be amazed, but if you don't know who he is, he said guitar players don't have hand strength; they have finger strength. And in a perfect world, a guitar player's pinky is as strong as their pointer finger, as strong as their thumb, and it's and their ring finger. Like all your fingers are the equal strength. He goes, that's a perfect world. He goes, whatever you do with your pointer finger, you could do with your pinky and vice versa. He goes, it's not your hand strength. We know it is, but his analogy was great, right? In a perfect world, every finger is independently strong. Like they don't need to work together. Any one of them could do the job. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So I would imagine Eddie's like that. His fingers are very strong because obviously his hands were very strong. So small, strong hands. So that's my way of saying you could try his next. I'm sorry. That was a long way to say, Mark, just try a Wolfgang out. Start there. All right, T-size. We're going to finish up these two. I just want to make sure real quick that I'm not missing one. We're going to finish up these three. I'm sorry, Amanda, I didn't get to more of yours. T-size says, hey, I'm a Strat guy and a Les Paul guy. I played an SG before, but I felt like everything shifted left. Oh, it does, about 3 inches. It's totally out of whack. Yeah, the SG is like, to me it's like where I'm looking down and where I see the 12th fret. To me, on the SG, the 12th fret isn't down like by my leg. It's forward. It's absolutely forward. Yeah, okay, I'm agreeing with you so far. Let's go on. He says, but I feel like everything shifted about 3 inches and it feels weird. Is there some learning curve with the SGs or am I just weird? No. It's a learning curve. And the only thing I can tell you that's positive is as someone who discovered SG very late in life, think about this. I don't know when, you could find it. You go find my SG video. It's a Tobacco Burst SG video on YouTube. Whatever day that video comes out, just understand that I got into SGs about within a couple weeks of that. That's how long I've been playing and loving SGs for the most part. So it's not something I've been doing for decades. It's been, probably 6 years, right? 6, 7 years. Long, but not super long. It did take me a while. Some people, you're not going to jive with it. I did. All of a sudden, it just did. And one of my concerns was exactly that. Like, what if I get used to this thing and everything else feels weird? For some reason, I get used to it and nothing else feels weird. But I do prefer it. So because I've been a Strat style guitar, so before Strats, I played Strat style guitars like Ibanez. Because I'm a Strat style guitar player, in other words, that's the guitar I've dominated my life with, I'm always going to be kin to, going to the Strat. Like, it's always like perfect for me. It's like, that's home. But besides that lineage of like, I've had a Strat my whole life and I just like Strat style guitars, not physically Strats, but style guitars. I could easily be an SG player only for the rest of my life. So those are the two guitars for something that appealed to me the most, by far. Clan of House Cats says, customer wanted 6105 narrow tall. I prefer jumbo. Yeah. I like the frets to be as big as possible. It's just, sometimes, I regret it because, you feel the bumps on the side of the neck when you feel the frets are so big, but I like tall frets and big frets. Bigger, wider, thicker, bigger, just, I don't know why. I just really don't like feeling the fretboard underneath my finger. So it's all about just, I don't want to touch the fretboard. That's not so much the fret material and stuff itself. It's just when I do vibrato, I just don't like to feel, the saying nails on a chalkboard, when I feel the fretboard with my finger, it just does that to me. It's like almost like so two things I can't really handle, especially rosewood fretboards, right? More so than ebony and maple when it comes to touching the fretboards. That's even more so. Two things I just can't do. I can't have my finger touching or scratching the fretboard when I'm playing, and I can't have a brushed aluminum pickguard on my guitar. Both those, if my fingernails cross either one of those two surfaces, it's like, I can't do it. So I love aluminum pickguards on guitars, brushed aluminum. I love the way they look. I just can't own one. So I always have plastic pickguards. Like in a perfect world, I'd have aluminum pickguard on my Kiesel Delos, but I can't do it. As soon as my fingernails cross it, it's just weird. Same thing with the fretboard. It's just too weird. Anyways, please check out the podcast with Gabe, the CEO of Guitar Center, if you so wish. And then there's a couple of deep dives that are coming out. There was one that was supposed to come out Thursday, and then I was on the road. I couldn't do it. So you'll see that one very soon as well. All right, guys. Thank you for that. And I'll see you next Friday. Till the next time, thank you for your time and know your gear.
The Know Your Gear podcast. Today's episode of the Know Your Gear podcast is brought to you by Patreon members, channel members, and viewers who like and subscribe. Thank you for making this possible.